Good afternoon again to everyone who just joined. Welcome to today's lesson. We are very pleased that you have joined us for today. Melekule she's almost there. Um, Technology is a wonderful thing until it let us down, but she's almost there and she will continue very shortly then with the presentation. Thank you again for your patience and please remember to complete the attendance register. Ladies and gentlemen, Lufele just informed me that she's almost there. It's just a final hiccup, but she will join us shortly. Thank you again for everyone joining us for the English FAL Paper 1 discussion today. It's for the preparation of the March Task 4.
Thank you, bye. Good afternoon, Emerencia. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome.
Okay. There's a bit of an echo. I'm using a different office, but I hope I'm audible enough. Good afternoon, grade 12s. Good afternoon to your teachers as well. Apologies for the delay, but I'm here now. I see Emerencia is already sharing the slide. My name is Miss Mpolukele. I'll be helping you to prepare for for task 4, the one that we'll be writing on the 13th of March. But apart from that, I also want to alert you to a few errors that you commit when you answer comprehension and summary. Today's lesson will be very short. We're only focusing on comprehension and summary. Please jot down your questions. If you have any questions, any comments, jot them down. I'll give you a chance for us to go through them at the end of this presentation. I hope the background information is not too disruptive. Unfortunately, I'm not joining you guys from my own office where there is a bit of some tranquility. But in any case, we'll try to make the most of what we have for today. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you, Emerencia. So for today's paper, we'll be using last year's paper as our background paper to assist us with the common errors that to identify what common errors are and how we can avoid them. So the task that you'll be writing on the 13th of March will comprise comprehension 30 marks and summary 10 marks. Now, when we set comprehension and summary, the examiners are mainly interested in your ability to read with understanding. Now, when we say read with understanding, we're focusing on both sections. In question 1, comprehension, you have to be able to read the text, go through the title, understand what the title is about, do your own title breakdown, try to understand prediction, try to predict what the comprehension is all about by just merely reading the title. And in summary, when you read with understanding is when you are able to read a lengthy sentence and give it back to me in a shorter form. So reading with understanding in both questions is very critical. Now, when you are asked questions, you have to give an interpretation of certain phrases or concepts. These might be figurative expressions. These might be ironic expressions. These might be expressions that use a little bit of an elevated language, a language that needs you to lower it down a bit. So you have to give an interpretation of what you understand by these phrases. Sometimes it can even be commonly used phrases, and you have to be able to tell me what it means in this context, as used in this context. So when your teachers teach you, they will focus on these. So how to read a comprehension with understanding, but also how to read a summary with understanding such that you'll be able to write it in a shorter form. And moving to point number 3, read information and use your own words to summarize what you have read. Remember, when you go to universities, it will be important for you to be able to read voluminous texts and be able to write them in your own words, but words that you understand, words that you will be able to remember. So this exercise is very important, even beyond grade 12. You have to be able to use the information from the text to reply to the set questions. And in doing so, you must be able to form your own opinions as well. So you will understand that when you're asked questions, each question is based on, for example, in comprehension, you will be referred to a particular paragraph. You'll be referred to paragraph 1, and everything that is asked from, in question 1.1 will be based on what is presented in paragraph 1. So you must go back to paragraph 1. So I always advise my learners that you read the entire comprehension, have an idea of what it's about, understand what message it's communicating or conveying through. Once you are done, you can then go back and answer questions, but per paragraph. So you go back to read paragraph 1 and then answer questions based on paragraph 1. Likewise with paragraph 2 and 3 and so on. Thank you, Emerentia. Slide number 5. Yeah, now these are the common mistakes that the previous grade 12 cohort committed, which I think you will not commit. So I'm trying to give you some of the examples. If you have the 2025 November paper 1 with you, you can just go back and I will show you what mistakes to avoid in that paper. For example, when you are asked to quote, you have to stick to the required number of words. In the previous paper, 112, candidates are required to quote one word, which has the same meaning as. Now, they have to go back to the paragraph and look for any word that would be equivalent to this meaning. What most candidates looked for was not what was asked in the question, and some of them did not even quote one word. They would still not exceed the number of words. So sometimes you might be asked to quote 2 words. Sometimes you might be asked to quote 6 consecutive words. When that is asked, it means it's a range of words where one word comes after the other. So the order of words must appear as it is presented in the comprehension passage. When we ask for quote 6 or 5 consecutive words, it has to be 5 or 6 words where the order follows one, the word comes one after the other as the order appears in the comprehension passage. Now, explanation of expressions. Do not use words that are given in the text. For example, this is mostly applicable in inferential questions. If you are asked to use your own words to explain what it means, for example, to buy a world of pleasure. When the writer says, I found myself in the world of pleasure when I read that book. So you are now asked to explain what the world of pleasure means. You cannot repeat the words world and pleasure because these are the key words in this expression or in this phrase that we're trying to decode. Now, when you look for words similar meaning, you have to find words with similar meaning, but that can still be used in this context. For example, the writer means that he found himself in a place of fun, a place where he enjoyed himself. That is what would be equivalent to a world of pleasure. So what do you do when you find when you give explanation of expressions using words? Number 1, it is very important to identify keywords. In this context, keywords would be world and pleasure. Number 2, you have to find synonyms for these words. Now, the synonyms that I've come with from the top of my head are a place for world and where one enjoys himself or where one has great time, where one has fun. Now, before you can choose which one will be your answer, you have to go back to the context given. And whatever your response is, it must still match the meaning of this phrase, a world of pleasure, in context. So whatever you give must be able to match what we have given you. I hope that makes sense. Now, when we move on to multiple choice questions, you have to eliminate the obvious incorrect options. So before you can choose the most correct response, you have to eliminate all the incorrect options and be left with 2 or 3. Sometimes you'll be left with 2 and closely related options, where the answer could either be C or D, or the answer could be A or D. And then you have to decide between these 2 answers, which one is the most relevant answer. And that is when you will then decide based on your findings. Now, I just want to take you back to the true or false question. True or false question? The question would be, why is the following statement false? If the question is, why is the following statement false, then you are definitely told that the statement given below is false. So you have to make the statement true. So you cannot say, for example, from the previous question, we had the music industry suffered a great financial loss in 2023. What some candidates did was to give us the same sentence and negated it. And what they wrote there was the music industry did not suffer a great financial loss in 2023. This cannot be correct because you have just negated the statement. You have just opposed the statement without telling me what is incorrect about this statement. So you have to tell me why is the statement incorrect, and by finding the correct answer in the passage. But if the question is, why is the following statement true? Your job is much easier. You have to give support to prove why that statement is true. So whatever the examiner will give will be something that is closely related to what they have said without using the exact same words. So you have to go back to the text and find a statement or a phrase with similar meaning so that you can prove that the given statement is true. Now, the inclusion of statistics is a popular inferential question that most examiners enjoy asking. What you have to do is to find out, do we include statistics for research purposes? Do we include statistics to prove that this article is validated and it's valid, it's factual, it is true, it is credible? The information given here is credible because there's statistics to support what is said. So inclusion of statistics can lend itself to various factors. One of each would include any of the I have given, but there is a catch. In last year's comprehension, the examiner was a bit tricky in this sense, not tricky in a bad way, but they reversed the question. Instead of asking why a certain body was included, they wanted to know, why is it mentioned? So candidates would mostly be able to say, for example, IFPI, which is an acronym of International Federation of the Phonographic Industry. This is used widely in music industry. They would say IFPI has been included to validate the text and stop there. But they do not say, why do we need the text to be validated? We need the text to be validated so that we can convince the reader that whatever information is given in this passage is reliable and credible. So candidates, you should be able to understand that when you are given statistics, when you are given names of important organizations or important bodies, like in this case, you have to know why. It is to show that some level of research was involved in composing or compiling this article. But we have research so that whatever we present is credible. We are able to rely on the information given in that article. Now, do you agree with the expert's view? This is an open-ended question that most passages would have. So for example, you'll be given a view from one of the paragraphs. Maybe it would be a concluding view, maybe it would be a controversial view, but the kind of view given would be the one that requires you to have a yes or a no opinion. Now, the first thing that you have to do, you have to look at the view and ask yourself, is this view linked to any of the discussions from the above paragraphs? Is this view even linked to the topic title that we looked at as we were inferring, as we were predicting what the title might be? Is this view realistic or is it too factual? Is this view an opinion? Now, do you agree with the view? Support your answer. Once you have established these, it will be easier for you to say whether or not you agree with the view. So whatever view is presented, it can be controversial, it can be an opinion of the writer, it can be too factual. You must be able to say whether or not you agree. Now, if you agree, write down all the reasons why you agree. Write down all the reasons why you might not agree. Whichever side has more points is the one that you will choose. I always say arrange your points from the strongest to the least most important. So start with the most important point and move on to the least most important point. Now, in the event that you find your positive views are more than your negative views. Sorry, in the event that you find that your positive views are more than your negative views, you can take the no part. In the event that you find that your positive views are more than the negative views, you'll take the yes part. But in the event that you find out that you are on par, both views, you have 1, 1 or 2, 2, then my advice is go for a combination response. What is a combination response? A combination response is when the candidate is allowed in an open-ended question. Do you agree? You are most allowed to say, yes, I agree, and give reasons why you agree. And continue in the same line. Don't skip a line, don't move to the next line. In the same line at the end of your discussion. It's one full discussion. You say, on the other hand, I also disagree because, and then you list your points, you give your points. Remember, this is a discussion question. So you will have both yes and no in one answer, but you must make sure that you have, I agree because you give your reasons. On the other hand, I also disagree because, and then you give your reasons. This is called a combination response because you are showing the examiner that there are two sides to the story. There are two sides, and I am right in the middle. It could be right, it could be wrong. I could agree, I could also disagree. For example, when you do this, when you engage in this discussion, you must make sure that the yes part, the yes response is substantiated by yes comments. Whatever reasons you give must substantiate the initial yes response. Likewise, with the no response, it must be preceded by the supporting evidence. So you cannot swap around because now that is going to be incorrect. And you cannot have all in the middle. You cannot say, yes, I agree because these are my reasons. And no, I also disagree, or have all in the middle and continue. No, I also disagree because. So you must have that as one holistic response coupled together. Now, the famous question that I know most examiners enjoy asking is the suitability of the title. Remember when we started, we said when you look at the summary, you must be able to go back and check why the summary, when you look at the title, let's go back and check why the title is relevant. What do you think you will expect from reading that passage in this comprehension? Now, the other thing that you will do, once you have read, you go back to the title and you ask yourself, is there any relevance to what I have read? based on what is presented in the title. If there is any relevance, you can then say, yes, the title is suitable because, but you cannot just say it addresses the main points in the title, or the title addresses the main points in the passage. That is quiet, you are silent. You have to zoom in and give me the link between the title and what has been addressed. For example, last year's title was South Africa Exposed onto the Global Music Scene. And I'm sure some of you might have had an opportunity to go through the question paper. It is basically about the youngster called Tyler, who has made waves with her song titled Water, and how she has won numerous awards, including international awards. So we go back to the title, South Africa Exposed on the Global Music Scene. Discuss the suitability of this title. Now, you have to tell me, is this word or is this title used figuratively or literally? Is there any evidence of pun, irony? Has the writer made use of homophones or any sound devices like alliteration? Do you think there is an idiom in this title? If so, then you even have more points to write on. You'll say the title is so catchy, it's suitable to the title is suitable to the text because not all does the writer speak about explosion in literal terms. The writer refers to South African music becoming well received and more loved, and everybody all over the world. So the global music scene would refer to everybody who enjoys music all over the world enjoys listening to South African music. So this is a clever way by the writer to link the title with the text, because the text is about Tyler, who is one of South African artists winning numerous awards, even international awards. So that's just one of the ways you would go about it. This answer is not presented in the marking guidelines, by the way. But if you want to say the title is not relevant, then you have to find ways. Why do you say this is not correct? So, for example, to explode, the word explode carries negative connotations. I mean, a bomb would explode. A device that explodes has danger. It's dangerous. That in itself carries negative connotations. So we try not to use, so when we say South Africa exposed onto global music scene, it's as if something bad happened to South Africans, and this is likely to mislead the reader. The reader is likely to misinterpret the title and not be able to relate it to the text. So those are some of the questions, but now I want to show you some of the mistakes that you committed again last year. Whenever the question says, okay, I'll come back to text B. If we can just go to the previous slide. Sorry, Marentia. Whenever the question asks you, for example, to use your own words, you must know that the quotation will not be allowed. No quotation may be used when you're asked to use your own words. No quotation may be used when you are asked to explain. No quotation may be used when you are asked for an opinion, because that's another mistake that most candidates committed last year. They would be given a higher question, a question that requires their opinion, and they would go straight to the text and quote. You will not be credited. You will not be given marks for quoting from the text when you are asked to give your own opinion. You must always remember, when you ask for an opinion, it is important to come up with your opinion, but it must be based and rooted in the given text. Secondly, when you are asked to refer to a specific paragraph, and they mentioned, for example, a phrase or a word that was mentioned in another paragraph that is not mentioned, you are likely to try and answer in a different paragraph. You are not going to get marks for doing so. So each time before you start answering a question, there will be an instruction, a line reference or a paragraph reference in this case. You will be told that refer to paragraph 4, and then you go back to paragraph. You have to tell us, what does the writer mean by blah, blah, blah in this paragraph? Now, it is important that when you do that, you root your answer in the given paragraph. Do not mix them up. And perhaps the last thing I want to mention in comprehension is why like your punctuation marks are very important. Why do we use ellipses? Why do we use italics? Why do we use a dash, for example? So it is important that you know why are certain punctuation marks used in our tests. This will help you to understand why, because it affects meaning. So you must be able to know why certain punctuation marks are used in a text. They're not just used in a text to make it look beautiful, they are used for a reason. Thank you, Marisha. We can go to the next slide. Now, in text B, so text B is the one that will give you visuals. You'll be given visuals and you'll be expected to interpret these visuals. So you must be able to view and interpret. So whatever you view, it must be able to be substantiated with meaning. You must be able to tell me what you see in words. What do the visuals mean? For example, last year it was the grade 12's future plans, and what we talked there about was what they plan to do, what most grade 12's plan to do moving forward. Now, what are these visuals used for? You must always remember the title because it helps you, it gives you guidance when you answer certain questions. But are these visuals relevant? Is it easy for you to interpret these visuals? For example, the visual of a car represented traveling. Do you agree that people would use cars for traveling, or would you have expected to see a train or a bus or an aeroplane? You know, something like that. Now, there might also be figures, numbers presented in graphs, pie charts, bar charts, whatever form. So you must also know different types of presentation of figures. Are these figures easier to understand, or do you just see a whole lot of numbers that do not even add up? You have no idea why there are so many numbers. Or is it easier for you to understand because numbers make the meaning clearer? Would it be better to have used words instead of numbers to make the text clearer, or to give the text clearer meaning? Is the message clear enough? Is it easy for you to understand what's happening in the text without reading? Now, these are some of the questions that you have to ask yourself while you are viewing text B. But the most important thing that you have to remember, which is different from home language, is that you will never be asked to compare or asked to contrast text A and text B. As a matter of fact, what most examiners do is to strive by all means and give you two unrelated texts so that you have no means to compare and contrast them, because you're not going to be asked a question on that. This is different from home language. Now, if we look at last year, what the one question that most candidates struggled with was, for example, explain what is suggested by 12% find work. This is not an easy question, so candidates have to understand why is it only 12% of people who find work. And when you look at the visual, you can see that rather, when you look at the text as a whole, these are grade 12's future plans. But of these grade 12 learners, only 12% of them try to find work. But the highest number is those who go for academic studies, which was 39%. And the number was those who went for traveling, which was 6%. But now the question wants you to explain, why is it only 12% who find work? Now, What candidates did was to give answers outside the text, something like only 12% find work because other candidates have already, or other grade 12 learners have already looked for academic studies, have already taken gap year, and they did not answer in relation to this 12% find work. Now, I want to clarify to you, why is it only 12% of grade 12 learners who find work? Why is it not 39%? Why is it not majority? Why is it only 12% who find work? Perhaps it's because they cannot afford to study further. So it's easier for them to find work, and so that they can in future fund their own studies. Or perhaps it's because work is limited. There is limited work. So they cannot find work. Only 12% finds work because there is limited work. Or perhaps it could even be because they are not skilled. They only have grade 12. So only few of them will find work, because majority of people who will find work are people with university qualifications and so on and so forth. So whatever reason you gave, it must be rooted in this text. I think that was the most challenging question that candidates struggled with last year. But other questions were easier, and especially the open-ended question, a lot of candidates did very well because it was discussed whether the inclusion of visual 3 is relevant. Now listen to this. To text B. So the candidates have had to look at the visual of text, the inclusion of visual 3, which is a cell phone on top of a book, an open book, and then there is a song on top of it. Now, candidates have to explain how is or why is this relevant. Now, candidates were at liberty to relate this to gap year, which it represents. 19% of grade 12 learners want to take gap year. Now, they have to tell me why is it relevant to taking gap year, or they could relate it to their future plans. So it's an easy question to answer, especially if you keep on reminding yourself that the title of this visual is about grade 12's future plans. So whatever you answer there would be based on that. Now I'm trying to rush to the next question 2. Thank you, Emirati. I think we can move to the next slide. Question 2, summary. What most of you do in summary, I'm not going to go through strategies of how to answer summary, but I'm just going to go through the common mistakes that you make and what to avoid. Number 1, the presentation of your summary. Most of you would prefer to present your summary in 2 columns, and then you have facts and opinions. And we are begging you, please do not give me that format. We need you to give 7 points that have been written in full sentences, full stop. And it is so important that you leave lines open between your answers, because most candidates would write a point and on second thought want to go back to it and say, oh, by the way, I think this is the correct answer. And now they squeeze in the answers. But if you leave lines open, that gives you an allowance to squeeze in whatever you want to squeeze in. Not only that, it also makes your work more presentable and neater. But coming back to presentation, unlike in home language, you will not be asked to write your summary in paragraph form. So you have to write your summary in point form, and your points have to be presented in full sentences. And you have to know, if you present your summary in 2 columns, you will be penalized, because we will focus on the first side of your summary. And if you present your summary in a paragraph form, each sentence will count as a point. So that is going to penalize in a long run. So try not to present your summary in the correct format to advantage yourself. Now, what other candidates did was to give verbatim quotes. Verbatim quote is a quote, words that appear in the text as are. Same word format, same word order. For example, if we go to the summary text that was given in 2025, that was about remove stress from tertiary preparations. And what candidates would do, for example, I'm now moving to paragraph 2 of this text. Familiarize yourself with, okay, that one would not make sense. Familiarize yourself with the requirements of the course you have chosen. That one would be rephrasing of what is presented in the text, because the text reads, once you have chosen a course, familiarize yourself with its requirements. So if you start from the back and say, familiarize yourself with the requirements of the course you have chosen, that is correct. But let's look at the second one. Decide whether you will need financial aid. If you will be paying for your studies, settle the registration fees to confirm your admission. So what most candidates would do would be not to write the sentence from the top, but to take it from the middle. Settle the registration fee to confirm your admission. That is incorrect, because the word order is exactly the same as what it is in the original text. So try not to use the same word order as it appears in the text. And the other thing is most candidates would present their sentences with 2 points or 3 points in one sentence. You would have multiple answers in one sentence. Remember that one of the instructions in summary writing is to present 1 point per sentence. Sorry, I might go a little bit beyond 4 o'clock, but I'm almost done. I just want to finish this part. And know that we count number of words. Can I just go back to the previous one? When you write 1 point per sentence, we only mark the first point that appears in your answer. So if you're going to write points number 2 and number 3 in one sentence, we will only mark the first one. You will not get 2 marks for one sentence, even though one sentence carries 2 points. So do not penalize yourself. Now, the other thing is we count the number of words. So it is important that you stick to the given word limit. In grade 12, it is 70 words. And do not give nonsensical sentences, just trying to make them to quote without giving verbatim quotes. Because once you give nonsensical sentences, you lose grammar. So if they don't make sense, we cannot credit them. And it is important to indicate the correct total number of words used, even though you will not be penalized, but it is important to indicate the correct number of words used. Thank you, Emma. Next slide, please. Okay, I just want to thank the grade paper 1 senior markers, DCMs, and chief marker for the inputs. It's a bit unfortunate that I could not share all my notes with you due to time and due to my office being inaccessible, but nonetheless, we tried the class to get through to the class. I apologize for background information. Now I'd like to take questions, please. If there are any questions, I just want to go to the chat box and see if there are any questions. Okay.
Ma'am, I don't
Okay,
see
it was
any.
basically, okay, Sbusiso Mia is on. Okay, thank you, Emerisha. I think Sbusiso Mia.
I will just see if I can disable the mic there. Just give me a moment.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, you can
Yes. Go on, Sbusiso.
Okay, you can
Sbusiso.
Does it happen that the question says refer to paragraph 1, only to find that the answer is in paragraph 3 or 4?
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sbusiso, for your question. I'll just repeat Sbusiso's question. for everybody's benefit. Has it ever happened that the examiner would say refer to paragraph 1, but only to find out that the answer to that question is in paragraph 3 or paragraph 4? No, that has never happened. In fact, what would rather happen is that you would find the instruction refer to paragraph, and perhaps there might be some words repeated in paragraph 3, similar to the words in question. But the examiner is basically looking for the answer that appears in paragraph 1. So whatever you do, do not be distracted by the same words that appear elsewhere in the passage. You must be strictly guided by the instruction, refer to paragraph 1. Thank you, Spusiso, for that question. Any other questions? I think, Spusiso, you can lower your hand now. Yeah. Thank you, Spoo. Any other question?
I don't see any hands and I don't see anything in the chat. If there's someone who's still thinking, maybe I would just like to thank you for the presentation. We always learn so much from you. Thank you so much. And we know you've experienced connection trouble, but thank you for joining us anyway. And thank you for leading us in this presentation. We really learned a lot. So thanks to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Buotas, and apologies once again for the gremlins earlier. Thank you so much. And good luck to our learners. I think maybe just to remind them, I'm told that they're writing on the 19th of March. Task 4 will be written on the 19th of
Paul, I think we've lost your, you're not audible. So I'm not sure if you've lost connection again. But good luck to everyone. No, grade 12 is hard. And we know you are working hard, and good luck to all the teachers. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Waters. We truly appreciate your patience and assistance in this case. I'll stay online for some time in case there's somebody who wants to ask, perhaps a shy person who prefers to ask outside the meeting. So I'll stay online for about 10 minutes or so. I'm just going to mute my mic because there is background noise here. I see a lot of learners are still logged in, but I don't see any questions. I wonder if there's a reason. Yes, Kagiso, go I'm going to unmute you. You can go on and ask the question. So you can go on. You can just unmute yourself and say what you can go on and ask your question. Kagiso, you can go on. Kagiso Madibo. Okay, there's a question in the text. I see, Kagiso. Good evening, ma'am. I'm asking on how we can maximize the amount of marks we get on paper 2 and paper 3. I'm having problem with my mic. Okay, not a problem. Kagiso, let's start with paper 3. I believe it is important that you must go through all your transactional texts. Your teacher would have shared with you at some point, I think sometime earlier this year, your teacher would have shared with you the breakdown of all the transactional texts that you have to produce. For example, all the longer transactionals and all the shorter transactionals. It is very important that you know the format of each transactional text. But over and above that, it is also important that you familiarize yourself with the contents of each text. For example, if it is a letter of request, what type of language must you use? If it's a letter of apology, what type of language must you use? And for example, when it's a letter of complaint, are you allowed to use emotive language? Like, can you be emotional and fight and use swear words and offensive language? You're not allowed to. So all those things play an important part. As much as the structures and the formats are important, it is equally important that you also know the content, how to go about it. Now, when it comes to essays, those are my favorite parts. With an essay, it's creative. You must always try not to choose the most common topic, the one topic that every learner will choose, because then it becomes boring for one person to read what every learner has written on. So unfortunately, I did not prepare for paper 3 today, but I just want to think from the top of my head. It gets easier. It gets easier was one of the easiest topics to write on, because you had to show the process that maybe sometimes it starts from a difficult point, but it moves on to a less difficult part. That's what candidates had to do, the process. So you had to communicate that either in a narrative form or in a descriptive form, or even in a personal reflective form where you tell a story of what you went through. The most interesting story that I remember reading was of a learner who said, when I started grade 12, it seemed as though everything, all walls were closing in on me. Everything was falling apart. But as time went on, I tried to manage my time better, and it got easier. So it was with time and more experience and more exposure that I tried to find ways to deal with grade 12. And the way they had structured their essay, you would understand what they meant when they said all walls were closing in on them. They would get a lot of homeworks, and he would not even be able to finish all homeworks. He would still sleep late at night and not be able to study for the next day's test or whatever. And so they gave examples of what it meant when they said all walls seemed to be closing down on me. And that in itself is imagery. You can imagine all walls coming in and closing down on you. And you have to use rich language when you write your essay. You have to use beautiful descriptors, strong verbs, like don't just say, I walked into the room. If you walked slowly, use a word like I waltzed into the room. As I waltzed into the room, all eyes were on me instead of everybody was looking at me. So you try to make it interesting even for the reader to say, wow, this learner is well read. And as you do that, I've noted you, Tepang. I'll give you a chance to ask a question as soon as I've answered everything about Tepang. And once you have done that, it is so important that your essay must flow. So you're not just going to find these figurative expressions that are used out of context. You must make sure that you use them in context and you're able to align them within each paragraph. Each paragraph must communicate a different idea. Each paragraph must be able to relate back to the topic, and each paragraph must be connected to the previous one and the next one. And now moving to paper 2. Unfortunately, with paper 2, you cannot rely on summaries. If you're doing short stories, you must know all 8 short stories. You must know all characters. You must know what their roles are. For example, who is the father, who is the daughter, who is the brother, what their relations are like. How do these people relate? Is it a loving-hating relation? Is it a friendly relation? Is it a jealousy? You have to know how these characters relate. But the point I'm making is you must know the full story. So you must read the entire story, not just the summary. And if it's drama, if possible, I would advise that if you get a chance to watch the drama, it always makes it a lot easier. Not that it replaces studying the actual genre, but it makes it a lot easier for you to study when you go back and study and remind yourself what the drama is all about. And if it's poetry, I love poetry so much because it's shorter, it's simpler, it's straightforward to the text, and you just have to know your figures of speech and poetic devices. So if you're doing poetry, make sure that you know your poetic devices before you even start with poetry. If you're doing drama, if you can, try to watch it, and it will be easier for you to remember when you revise. And if it's short stories, there are no shortcuts in short stories. You must know all your short stories. You must be able to remember what's happening in each short story. You must remember what the role of each character is and how each character relates with the other character. So that would be my overall it's deeper than that. It's longer, but I'm sure when we do paper 2 at some point, the paper 2 people will share more with you. But perhaps one other thing I want to share with you in paper 2, when you're asked a theme question. A theme question might be asked in extract, so it can be extract based or it can be overall. So it might be discuss the theme of XYZ in this extract, or discuss the theme of XYZ in this novel or in this short story or in this drama. If it's in this drama, then you can refer to any event that has happened that you can remember that is equivalent or that relates to the theme being discussed. And when you do that, it will be so much simpler that whatever you say, you support. When you say this character was a jealous person, then you give evidence. She was not happy when her friend bought a car and she didn't have a car. So whatever you say, you must back it up with contextual evidence. Contextual evidence is evidence from the book that you have read or the drama that you have read. Now that would be with theme questions. For each point that you give, back it up with contextual information. And with irony, every question will have an irony. Now, what most learners struggle with is to show both sides of irony. When we say something is ironic, we mean that I know that the definition of irony would not touch on this, but in literature, when, for example, Kagiso is the one telling learners to keep quiet in the classroom, and Kagiso comes back and makes noise. So I would walk in class and say, okay, class, tell me what's ironic about Kagiso making noise. It's ironic because I want you to now break down the meaning of what's ironic about this situation. It is strange because in reality, so you have to compare the strange part about what is happening to the reality of what is happening. What is strange about what's happening and what is the reality of what's happening? So what's ironic about Kagiso telling all the grade 12 learners to keep quiet when Kagiso himself is making noise? It is strange that Kagiso is telling the very grade 12 learners not to make noise, but he Okay. Kagiso, I hope I've answered your question. And perhaps with open-ended questions in literature as well. The important thing is combination responses are also welcomed. So if you go back to your literature and you are asked, why is, let's say, drama, for example, why is Mr. M is a good person, and then you have to discuss your views. So when you do that, you have to go back and check Mr. M, the points that make Mr. M to be a good person and the points that make Mr. M not to be a good person. If you have 3 points for yes and 1 point for no, you are most definitely going to say yes, he's a good man because you have 3 points to substantiate that. But if you have 1 point to this side and 2 points to that side, then make it a combination response where you present your answer as a holistic answer, one answer that discusses both parts, but you have to show me where you say, on the other hand, I think he is not a good man because he did A, B, C. But Mr. M is a good man because he does A, B, C. But on the other hand, I think he's also not a good man because he did X, Y, Z. I hope I've answered your question very briefly, Tsepang. And I'll now come to, Kagiso, I hope I've answered your question. And I want to give Tsepang a chance. Tsepang, please unmute yourself and ask your question. And I'll come to Nardi. I see that 2 hands with Nardi. I'll come back to you as soon as Tsepang has unmuted himself. Tsepang, please unmute yourself and ask your question. And Tsepang, I think while you are unmuting yourself, when the question says you must code and you forget to include the inverted commas, are you going to get an incorrect answer? Definitely not. It is advisable that you give quotation marks to show that what you're about to present has been coded. But if you forget, we understand the focus on the marker is for us to look for the correct answer. Okay, so you will not get penalized for forgetting incorrect, for forgetting to include quotation marks. Tsepang, if that was the only question, I would love now to give over to Nardi. Nardi, please go ahead and ask 2 questions. I think it's 2 learners from Nardi connecting with Nardi. You can ask your question. Nardi, if you are unable to unmute yourself because you are now unmuted on our side, if you are unable to unmute yourself, you can just type it in the text. I've allowed your mic, so I just need you to unmute yourself, Nardi.
Hi, ma'am.
Yes. Hi, how are you, Nardi? Is
I'm
it
good.
Nardi?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you, Manak?
I'm good. I'm good.
I'm very well. Go on. What's your question?
My question is, so if I quote more than they have asked, I won't get a mark or what?
Unfortunately, if the question says quote 4 consecutive words and you decide to quote 5 words, we don't even consider the first 4. We look at what you have given us, and what you have given us is 5 words. So even if, let me give an example. I'll just read from last year's paper. Let's say you were supposed to quote 4 consecutive words to show that what's the name? Tyler's music is loved by many people. And you say, oh, Tyler is a good artist. And the answer should be, Tyler won the first Grammy. So it's 2, 4, 5. So we say quote 5 consecutive words to prove that Tyler's music is one of the best music. And the answer is supposed to be Tyler won the first Grammy. Now you write the young South African artist Tyler won the Grammy. You are not going to get a mark. Or even if you write Tyler won the first Grammy award in the United States, you are still not going to get a mark, even if the first words of your answer are what we are looking for. You know why? Because the question was very, very clear that you are to give us 4 words and nothing more, nothing less. So if you give us the incorrect number of words that we have asked for, we can already see that this learner cannot count, and therefore she or he does not deserve this mark. Have I answered you, Nardi?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I see there was another hand where they
Ma'am, can I ask for paper 3 too, or we only
okay.
ask questions for paper 1?
You can ask. We still have time. I'm still here. You can ask.
So let's say our topic it's about love, right? And then
Mhm.
in my introduction, I explain my topic, and then in my body, I explain types of love. Maybe in the first paragraph, I explain maybe the love for my friends, the second one for my mom, etc. Is it okay? Or I must maybe tell a story that corresponds with my life to the essay.
Okay. I need you to give me an example. The title perhaps is, let's give an example of the title.
Maybe it's about love.
It's about love, but what is the title? Maybe something like Love Makes the World Go Around, something like that.
Yes.
Or Love is Life. I want the title. It's
Let's
about
say
love, but what is it?
let's take the love is life.
Love is life. Good. Now, there are 2 parts to this topic. You have to tell me about love, and you have to tell me how love contributes to life. So, for example, the examples that you gave, that you want to talk about the love that you have for your mom, you'll give an example of how your mother has made your life easier by loving you. All right, so that would be your first paragraph. Beautiful. How your friends have made your school life bearable. Perhaps when you started in a new school, you didn't know anybody and they loved you, they showed you love and they protected you. And that made your school or schooling career more interesting, and you were able to adapt and to even excel in your academics. It's relevant. And you go on to how your teachers have supported you, or you can even go on to outside. So now you have talked about your mother, you've talked about your friends, now you even go on to talk about your teachers, or even go on to talk about something else. But at the end of the day, everything that you talk about The type of love that you tell me must go back to explain to me, how does that relate to life? How does that type of love that you're describing contribute to life? How has it made your life easier? How has it made your life enjoyable? You know, so love is life. I must be able to hear that from your relationship with your mother, from your relationship with your friends at school, from your relationship with your teachers, or and so on and so forth. So that would be ideal. But the most important thing, that your paragraph, your introduction, must be able to tell me what you are going to focus on. For example, you must be able to break down the topic, and you must be able to introduce the topic to the reader as well. For example, love is life can be broad, but you are going to talk about it from this perspective. Do you understand, Tsepang? No, it's Nardi. Nardi, are you
Yes,
still on?
yes, I
Perfect.
understand, ma'am.
Have I
Thank you.
answered you? And can I just say this? When you write a summary, to all of you, remember, it is important to stick to the word limit, because they will not read beyond what they don't want. So you have to write. If they ask you for 300 words, make sure that you count the number of words and you give them 300 words. If you go 500 words, you are penalizing yourself. Okay? So words are given for a reason. There's a reason why you are given words, the number of words to stick to. It's for you to ensure that you write within that word limit. All right, thank you, Nardi. Thanks for your question. Farm has another question. For summary, are we quoting or changing the sentence in our own words? Now, Sapang, when you write a summary, it is very important that you use your own words. If you quote, we will mark it correctly, but you will not get 3 language marks. So for you to get 10 out of 10, it is important that you don't quote from the text. It is important that you use your own words as far as possible, and make sure that your own words, you can, if for example, you don't know how to say something, look at the sentence that you think, okay, maybe this is what I should say. When you write a summary, I did not do the strategies of writing a summary because I thought you would have already treated that. When you write a summary, the first thing you do is to read the sentence, what we call the question line. So in last year's paper, it was read text C below and list 7 ways to prepare for tertiary education. Now, that is the question line, how to prepare for tertiary education. Now, for every sentence that you read, you decide whether you're going to keep it or delete it. When you do this, it becomes so much easier for you to identify the important points. Once you have identified the important points, you have to rework them. So paraphrase them or make them around or shift them or whatever, but you cannot present them to me the way they are presented in the text. I'll just use a few examples. Before you read each statement in the paragraph in your summary, you first read the question line. Ways to prepare for tertiary education. Getting ready for college or university is an exciting yet challenging journey. I delete this because it does not tell me how to prepare for tertiary education. To make sure you are all set, you must be fully prepared. I delete this because it also does not tell me how to prepare for tertiary education. Once you have chosen your course, familiarize yourself with its requirements. Now, this tells me how to prepare for tertiary education, and for this reason, I will keep it. If you'll be paying for your studies, settle your registration fees to confirm your admission. I'm keeping because it tells me how to prepare for tertiary studies. So you do that. Each time you read a sentence, you go back to the question sentence and you ask yourself how to prepare for tertiary studies, and then you read that question. If it answers the question, you keep it. If it does not answer the question, you delete it. I hope that makes sense. So, from Dinari, there's a question. So, ma'am, hi, ma'am, is it really necessary to use your own words as far as possible while writing a summary? Now, in conclusion, about using your own words and quoting when writing a summary, it is very important that you use your own words when you write a summary, because when you use your own words, you are most likely to get 10 out of 10 for summary writing. But if you quote, you are most likely to get only 7 out of 10 because you will not get 3 language marks for using your own words. So if you have identified the important points already, if all those important points that you have identified are correct, you are already in the 7-mark range. But if you continue to use your own words when you present these 7 sentences, you get 3 bonus marks, which will then sum up to 10 out of 10. So which one is better? To give quoted sentences or to give sentences in your own words? If you ask me, I'd say it's way much better to give sentences in your own words because you will get more marks. And then Nardi says, so ma'am, in conclusion, we summarize or not, and if we choose the picture, we will be given extra marks. Which question is this, Nardi? Nardi, I'm lost in the conclusion. Oh, in the conclusion, we summarize. And do we choose the picture? We will be given extra marks. Nardi, please, you can just unmute yourself when you are ready. You can ask the question. I'm not sure if I understand what you mean in this question. But for paper three, in conclusion, we summarize, and if we choose the picture, we'll be given extra marks. Let's talk about paper 3 when you choose a picture in essays. Your visual topics are very interesting, and what's interesting about them is that we are guided by you as the learner. You tell us how you see the picture and what you think about the picture and what your essay is. But the most important thing is you must have a title that is relevant to the given picture. So when you come up with a title, it must relate to the picture that we have given you. And the essay that you write must be exactly relevant and suitable to the topic that you have come up with. So when you choose a picture, you are more advantaged in this sense. You come up with your own topic, you come up with your own essay. So when you choose a picture, you are not given extra marks, but are more likely to earn better marks because you are telling us which direction you want your essay to take. Now, coming back to Dinari, in the comprehension, if the question says use your own words, do you quote or are you expected to answer using your own words? That's a very good question. If you come across a question that asks you to use your own words and you quote, you will not be given a mark, 0. You get 0 for quoting when you're asked to use your own words. If you can go to any previous question, you'll see that a question that requires you to use your own words is written in capital letters. Own words would be written in capital letters to show you that you are restricted from quoting. So the words that you use must be your own. Which is why when I started, I made that example that when the writer says, I was going into the world of pleasure after, when as I was reading the book. Reading the book took me to a world of pleasure. Now, when the question says, explain what the writer means by world of pleasure. You are not even allowed to use the words world and pleasure in your answer. You cannot say the writer means that he went to a world that gave him pleasure. That is not, it has not answered the question. As a matter of fact, you have given the question back to me. It's like asking you, how old are you? And you say, me, how old I am. That's your answer. So you have not answered the question. So that would be one of what you are doing there. So what you are doing then is showing me that you understand what it means to go to a world of pleasure. But if you use the words world and pleasure in your answer, then I'm not convinced that you understand what it means. And remember, you have to convince the marker that you know what you're talking about. You understand the question, and the answer that you have given them is correct to the best of your ability. So you cannot quote, especially when you are asked to use your own words. Okay. I don't know if there's still somebody who has questions, or if somebody wants to type their questions in the text. I don't see any hands up. Is there anybody who has not signed the register? Have you? Okay, Kasiso? Go on, my baby, you can ask your question. Your mic has been enabled. You can ask your question. Kasiso? Okay, there's a new message, I see. So ma'am, in paper 3, if we choose a picture and give a broad topic, like for an example, if we are given a picture of an ocean and we give a broad topic, and then in our essay talk about everything that relates to what is it okay, that is okay. So a broad topic must be related to what you are going to talk about. I would advise you to make sure that whatever topic you give, so you are given a picture that shows an ocean, and your topic is related to water. So there is relation there. Water relates to ocean. And what you are going to talk about in your essay is related to water. That is perfect. So you are allowed to do that. Okay. If everybody has signed their attendance registers and there are no questions, I would love to thank you for a wonderful group this afternoon. And yeah, we can then disconnect and continue with our homework. Whatever homework you have, you can go back and continue with your homework. And thank you so much for being a lovely audience this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and the week that lies ahead. And good luck with your grade 12 studies. All right. Have yourselves a lovely afternoon. I'm now logging out in the absence of any questions.